Syria's longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad is facing uprisings on multiple fronts. As the main rebel offensive in the northwest continues to move toward Damascus, opposition factions in the south are closing in on the capital. These images on social media show how Syrian protesters toppling a statue of the late President Bashar al-Assad's father in Daraa, in the southern suburbs of Damascus. Rebels have already snatched the entire southern province of Daraa. In the north, Syrian rebels are patrolling the countryside around the key city of Homs as government forces dig in to defend the city and President Bashar al-Assad's 24-year rule. Let's bring in DW reporter Gasia Ohanes for more on the situation. So, Gasia, what exactly is the situation around Damascus right now?
Aaron, President Bashar al-Assad is facing the biggest challenge to his rule he's ever faced. They're closing in right now on 3 different fronts, the rebels. From the north, they're coming with reinforcements through Homs. From the south, you mentioned Daraa. There's also Suwaida that they've captured, and all these groups are coming together and heading north towards Damascus. They've already captured certain parts in the outskirts. And from the east, from the U.S. coalition area down south, bordering Iraq, that's where there's also another offensive. So there's 3 different fronts. They're closing in Damascus, and it looks like it's only a matter of time. Now, you showed those pictures of the Jarmana in the outskirts of Damascus. That is the Druze minority as well. So it's not just the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham rebels that we're seeing now, but also other groups like the Druze minority who've been protesting for over a year in other parts of Syria. Now it seems that they see an imminent fall of Assad's rule, that they're also challenging his rule in Damascus itself.
Well, as you mentioned there, it sounds like President Assad is surrounded on all sides. Where exactly does that leave his allies?
That is indeed the case. And before I get to his external allies, I want to talk about his closest allies internally. So a lot of Syrian generals have already fled Syria. There's many reports of them fleeing to different areas. There were generals who fled to Lebanon, Iraq as well. There's news that 2,000 Syrian troops have now sought refuge in Iraq. And so everybody's kind of realizing that the fall of Assad is imminent, so they kind of want to redeem themselves at the moment by turning against him, perhaps. We are seeing this on the front lines. There's many front lines suddenly collapsing, and the reason for this is they're trying to redeem themselves, so when the rebels come, they don't get executed for their actions in the past. So we're seeing his internal allies turn on him, and externally, Iran seems to have also changed its narrative on the leading rebel group, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HDS.
Now, this is a dramatic about-face in a war which has lasted almost 13 years. Where does this leave the civilian population?
It's a lot of mixed feelings. On one hand, you have civilians fleeing right now from Damascus towards the Syrian coast. Before that, we saw civilians fleeing from Aleppo as well, a lot of Kurdish. The Kurdish population, tens of thousands, even 120,000, some estimates are saying. On the other hand, you have political prisoners released from prisons after being there for decades for petty crimes in the eyes of the regime, like toppling a statue of Assad's father. So there's many celebrations, many reunions of families who haven't seen each other for decades. And on the other hand, a lot of displacement and fear of what's next and fear of the unknown.
All right, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. That was DW reporter Gasia Ohanes. Thank you very much for your reporting.
Short time ago, I asked journalist Ossama Muhammad for more on the developing situation near Damascus.
Actually, the situation is becoming changed very quickly and fastly. The rebels are taking from the southern countryside of Damascus, are taking the countryside of the city, starting with the Daraa. There is some kind of clashes happening in Daraa, in the southern of Damascus. In the same time, there is the advance of the Islamic militias and other rebels from the northern Syria up to Damascus, it looked there is no any chance for the regime to fight or to resist or take over or take back any kind of areas or any cities around Damascus.
So are you saying that it appears that the regime is going to collapse, or is there still some chance that Assad's allies, Russia and Iran, will ramp up their military support and somehow help the regime cling on to power?
That's really a good question to ask, but I don't think there is any chance for regime to fight back through his regional supportives, let's say, starting with the Russians or even with the Iranian militias or even with Hezbollah, you know. The regime doesn't have any chance to advance or to resist or to fight back against the rebels and against the Islamic radical groups. The regime have been left alone without any support from his alliance, without any kind of support even from the Arab countries. Like the government of Syria or regime tried to get the support from the Iraqi government. He sent his foreign minister to Iraq to see if there is any kind of support from them. At the same time, the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad himself, had a call with the UAE president and tried to get some support from them with supplies, with ammunition. But it looked like nobody is going to have any kind of support for the regime. Mostly after that, the regime didn't have the ability to keep his words and his promises about a political deal and process, which he gave it to the Arabian countries. So now regime is actually fighting alone in Damascus without any support from his alliance.
And what do you think will be the impact on the people of Syria if, in fact, the regime of Bashar al-Assad collapses? And maybe you can tell us specifically what would it mean for your region, the Northeast, under Kurdish control?
You know, that's the main question for everybody in the region. There is no any kind of statement or attitude by the coalition, by the international community, what's going to happen next. Nobody's know what's going to be next. Is it going to be that the Islamic radical groups will take over the Damascus, Homs, and now there is be kind of new constitution or government that's going to be established by this forces, or they're going to be a kind of deal and negotiations, as the general of SDF, Mazloum Kobane, mentioned in his media conference yesterday, that there is kind of negotiations and talks between SDF and the HTC, who is doing the mainly and leading the main rebel operations against Assad. So until now, nothing is clear. From their side, SDF, in the Kurdish majority areas in Hasaka, take it over the institutions and the areas which was under the control of regime. So it look, even for the Kurdish people, regime is not going to come back.
That was journalist Ossama Muhammad speaking to us from Qamishli in northeastern Syria. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.